K2 is a synthetic marijuana. It's toxic, and many overdoses, deaths, and even arrests are being reported in Brooklyn. In fact, the list of overdoses and deaths is growing. I'll be joined by a criminal law professor in less than a minute to discuss this. When you use the word culture, immediately people think about music and dance. My guest later in this program is the director of a grassroots cultural organization in Brooklyn. This is Brooklyn 45, and you can watch this and other programs on our YouTube site. Synthetic marijuana. This word and substance is on the lips, literally, of too many young people. Joining me to discuss this is a professor at Medgar Evers College. You also are a professor in criminal law.
That's correct.
Thank you for being my guest.
That's a real pleasure. I'm glad to be here. This is my first time here at the studios, and it's great, fantastic.
Why is this happening?
Well, it's one of the, in my opinion, I think it's a natural consequence of what I think is an immoral and nonsensical approach to this whole notion of controlled substances that this country has pursued for most of the 20th century and now going into the 21st century. What we see, of course, and you look at the example of prohibition of alcohol. That was a big deal going into 1920 when we actually had prohibition, and you see where that turned out. It promoted crime. It promoted the increased use really of alcohol, and most importantly, and to the point where we're talking about right now, is that you had all kinds of unregulated production of alcohol, and people died. They went blind. They lost their minds from these unregulated products that they thought were alcohol, and somebody was making it in their bathtub, for goodness sake. And it was totally chaotic. And within 12 years, the prohibition experiment ended. Unfortunately, when we're looking at the issues related to marijuana and other substances as well, the illegality approach and the criminalization approach has been the approach of choice at local, state, and federal levels, and we haven't changed. And so we see mass incarceration in communities of color. We see lives being destroyed unnecessarily because of this random and discretionary enforcement of these laws. And then you see, like the K2 you're talking about right now, you see these sideshow substances showing up because they are, quote, legal by somebody's notion, but they're not marijuana. And so because they're not marijuana, the people still will sell them in various places, and it's a shame. You wouldn't want any family member of yours or mine to wind up suffering from as what I can only call a nonsensical and immoral and truly inhumane approach to this notion of what substances people can or should use and whether they should be illegal or not.
The people who are using this, are they aware that they're using fake drugs?
Yes and no. In other words, people who are using these products, first of all, in many instances, people presume their own immortality. And while it may not be good for some people, it's not going to bother me until you're laid out on a slab somewhere. Right, so you've got that, and then ignorance is a powerful weapon, as we see with our current president. But I digress. But
who's not on marijuana?
No,
not as far as we know.
Not as far as we know, and maybe that might help him out. We never know. But quite seriously, what we see is that in many instances, this whole enforcement process really is not related to the question of whether or not you're actually helping people. Okay, the notion is that laws are supposed to protect us. Laws are supposed to deter us from bad behavior, but the notion that marijuana is somehow a drug which will be dangerous in some way, either to the user or to other people, is not scientifically proven. And we allow legalized tobacco. We allow legalized alcohol. We allow legalized sugar-based substances and so on. And people make their choices, and the science may or may not be clear about these things, but it's not a matter for the criminal law.
We've heard the mayor saying recently that people shouldn't be prosecuted for.
Yeah, no, they should be prosecuted, but that's not enough. And I've worked with the mayor when I was a commissioner in the Dinkins administration. I respect him, and I think he's a very good mayor. But I don't agree with this notion that of taking a halfway measure of saying people shouldn't be prosecuted, people shouldn't be arrested, we shouldn't have undercover agents spending time doing buys of marijuana. We should have. I would like to see our police force worrying about violent crime, like making sure that people are properly protected in their everyday lives. Okay, the notion that the sale of marijuana is illegal and therefore it turns into a criminal enterprise can be easily solved, as it has been in other jurisdictions around the country and around the world. Huh?
Solved.
Legalized. Make it a legal substance. So you don't see people, robbing, liquor stores for the liquor. I mean, it's a legal, or cigarettes. And I will tell you this, Dr. Taitt, that if indeed coffee cost $500 a pound, we couldn't walk the streets around here because coffee addicts would be losing their minds around here, right? So I just, you can't control everything about people's behavior, and it's not the role of the criminal justice system to do these things. I feel very strongly about it because we see it in our communities. I teach at Medgar Evers College. Medgar Evers College's population is about 75% female. Okay, it is because a lot of male students or potential students wind up running afoul of these minor league minor league laws with respect to the use of marijuana and other substances, and they wind up having to check that box for the rest of their life. Have you ever? And as soon as you check that box, you can't get federal aid to go to college. Mm-hmm. Okay, now is that a reasonable response of a rational society? Is that we want people to go to prison and we want people to not be able to pursue higher education because somehow marijuana is so much worse than alcohol, so much worse than cigarettes, so much worse than cigars? I think the answer is quite clear.
You perhaps agree, therefore, with the City Council member who has called for a dropping of low-level marijuana offenses.
Yeah, well, see, that's not far enough. I don't know what a high-level marijuana offense is. If somebody wants to have 200 pounds of marijuana in their house, God bless them. They can have a party, whatever they want to do about it. But if it's legalized, you can't just go out and sell it on your own. It would be on in some type of look at the sale of alcohol. Okay, and that seems to work out pretty well. You don't have people selling bootleg alcohol out here on Fulton Avenue. People will go to a liquor store, so people can go to a marijuana store. Fine, if that's your choice, fine. If it's not your choice, nobody's making you do it. But you shouldn't be worrying about going to jail. Low level is a halfway. I was going to use half something else, but is a halfway approach to what the concern is. It doesn't need to be criminalized. Okay, as long as a young man or young woman can wind up being arrested by the police for possession or use or sale of marijuana, we have a dysfunctional criminal justice system. There's too many people in prison right now. You look at the number of people who are in federal prisons, state prisons, and out at Rikers Island for arrests related to just marijuana alone, and you realize how bizarre this country's approach is to these things. I mean, particularly when you can buy all the cigarettes you want and kill yourself anytime you want.
Would you say that minorities are being unfairly targeted?
Absolutely. Listen, when you hear about drug raids taking place, police have first of all, they're spending all this money on undercover agents and surveillance and all of these things to find out, and they'll arrest people. They'll do it in the pink houses in Brooklyn, okay? But they're never going to do it in the dormitories at Columbia University or at New York University. They're just not, okay? Now you tell me, or ask your viewers to say, what's the difference between the pink houses, okay, and the dormitories at Columbia University or in NYU, and it's obviously class and color, and that's all it is. And again, you raised an excellent point, Dr. Taitt, which is that and not only is the law bizarre and immoral and just inhumane, but it's also not being enforced on any equal basis. Okay, and so therefore you wind up having mass incarceration impacting on communities of color. It doesn't impact on other communities.
So what do you say about the ongoing efforts to legalize marijuana?
Well, you know,
And you did say earlier.
yeah, it's absolutely legal in California. It's absolutely legal in Colorado. Other states, you know, the District of Columbia is pretty close to that at this point. Sure, but you know, listen. When I was president of the Harlem Lawyers Association, this goes back over 3 decades ago, I testified in front of Congress at the time, at a congressional committee, on this notion that this fascination with so-called illegal drugs was just an improper use of law enforcement authority as well as resources. You ask most people on the street, you know, neighbors and friends and family that you know, what is their biggest concern when it comes to criminal justice issues? It's not who's smoking a joint, not who is using marijuana or cocaine or heroin. They want to be safe. I want my belongings safe. I want my family to be safe. And people will say, well, you know, drugs cause crime. Well, no, the drugs, the illegality of drugs causes people to have to do other things in order to get their drugs.
Yes.
Okay, and as I said before earlier, if you made coffee $500 a pound, you know, you'd have armed guards around Starbucks. You know,
they won't arrest me because I can't drink coffee.
Okay, well there you go. But you better buy something if you're in Starbucks. That's
Yes, that is true. They're donuts. It works very well. I smiled when I saw this story a couple of days ago, that this medical marijuana dispensary was open on Fifth Avenue. Do you think we're going to see more of that?
Well, sure, and that's a step in the right direction. But you have to ask yourself, what is it about this notion of smoking marijuana, or ingesting it, however people may want, that is so problematic that it needs to be a subject of the criminal law? If it's a health issue, then let's deal with it from a health standpoint. Okay, we did that with cigarettes. Okay, there used to be a point where every movie featured somebody smoking cigarettes. Humphrey Bogart, who died from lung cancer, by the way. Gary Cooper, who died from lung cancer, by the way. You know, all these people, they smoked, and finally you started seeing warnings on the cigarette cartons, right? And you started saying that, okay, you can't have ads for cigarettes in baseball stadiums anymore, or on television, for that matter. So yes, so that's a way of dealing with the health aspects of tobacco. But believe you me, if you go to North Carolina, if you go to Virginia, or any of the tobacco-growing states in this country, you would be run out of town if you said, well, we actually should just burn these crops down and not give you any money for it. And you have to find something else to grow. Grow alfalfa. Okay, you know, that might be the last words you ever said, you know, if you propose something like that. So what is it about this particular substance? You know,
is it because it comes from outside of America?
No, I don't. I think, you know, part of it is that mythology grew up around marijuana usage in the 19s and in the 20s, that somehow the use of marijuana just made people crazy, okay, and did all kinds of terrible things. And you know, there was a movie in the late 20s, early 30s called Reefer Madness, okay, which showed very clean-cut people, white people, and then they smoked marijuana and they just went crazy. Okay, that's not typically what's going to happen, and it's certainly, you know, you can't base a criminal justice strategy on a movie, you know, which is about all the scientific evidence that they had at the time in the 1930s. It's just an antiquated approach, and it's inhumane when you think about the fact of what's the impact on a young man or young woman who winds up getting any type of misdemeanor or felony offense related to marijuana. What happens to the rest of their lives? Okay, they can't get loans to go to college. Okay, they can't participate in any number of professions, whether it's law or medicine, or even being a barber, for goodness sake. I was saying even being, you know, working in other areas that we don't normally associate with that. But once you start checking, you won't get a federal job anywhere. Okay, you won't get a state job anywhere. You won't be able to get, you know, maybe in some cities they'll look past that. But do you really want to cripple, you know, entire segments of our communities over something like this? It is beyond draconian. It's immoral. It's inhumane, and I don't know how any legislator or a government representative can look the community in the eye and say, yes, it's a good thing that of these thousands of people who are at Rikers Island right now, many of them are there because of marijuana. Okay.
But there is a difference, though, between marijuana and this synthetic marijuana K2.
Yeah, well, yes, and again, but remember the analogy I was using, which was that when alcohol is not available, then you see alternatives showing up, and people literally died during the 12 years of the Prohibition drinking unregulated alcohol that was being produced under unregulated situations. So now, yeah, K2 shows up, and people will try that, and if you ban that, people will try something else. But yeah, maybe somebody has actually died from smoking marijuana, but I've just never heard of it.
What do you say, therefore, to members of our communities, people who live in our communities, who, one, are using marijuana, and two, who face the prospect of being incarcerated or having their life destroyed because of committing a low-level offense? Yeah. What do you say to them?
Well, I mean, the first thing I said is what I say to my son, who's 21 years old, is that the first option should be, not to do these things because just as you said, the consequences are so dire. If you still choose to do that, then you just need to be careful as best you can. What does careful mean? Because you could be in the privacy of your own home and still somehow this winds up you wind up running afoul of the law. I think one of the things I would say to members of our community is that we need to start electing and supporting government officials who feel this same way with that kind of fervor. Not talking about low-level crime, the crimes related to marijuana. Not talking about just decriminalizing. We have to just get all those laws that relate to the use and sale of marijuana off the books, okay, and let people live their lives how they choose. There's no science I'm aware of that shows that somehow this country is going to go into some kind of decline because now marijuana usage is legal. And certainly in a country that within 4 years could elect Barack Obama and then elect Donald Trump, maybe there's something to be said for trying a different approach to things because this country is not going crazy because of marijuana, that's for sure.
Wallace Forde. Professor in law, criminal law as well?
Yeah, public administration is the department I chair. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for coming on Brooklyn 45.
My pleasure.
I know people are going to be talking about this interview. They're going to be talking about what you've said.
Okay. Well, I stand by it. And
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, and I'm happy.
And you've had the experience of working with other and with previous governments.
Well. Absolutely. And it's as I said, one of the things is that progress many times moves slowly, and that's you can say, well, that's okay. But you think about it, and I'll just leave with this. So you think about it, yeah, you move slowly, but people's lives don't move slowly. Okay, when you decide that, okay, we'll over a period of time, we'll take care of these laws, and maybe by 2025 you won't have these concerns. But what about all the people who get arrested and have their lives ruined in that meantime? What do you say to them? How do they get their lives back? How do they get their reputations back? And so action is needed now on these issues.
I've heard your position. Do you see the legalizing of marijuana occurring in our lifetime?
Yes, absolutely, and I'll tell you the reason why. Ultimately, it comes down to dollars and cents. Okay, the states that have legalized marijuana have also taxed the sales of this. And when you're looking about the decreased level of federal funding coming from the tax cuts and coming from the Trump administration going to states are looking for ways to increase revenue. And there's not a lot of ways. They can increase taxes just generally and have people move from one state to another, or you put more taxes on cigarettes, as we've seen, on alcohol, as we've seen, and people are saying, well, you've got all of this marijuana out here, why don't we tax it? Okay, and stop using billions of dollars of police resources to arrest people and go to undercover and buys and all of this kind of stuff. For what? I mean, it's not protecting me. It's not protecting you or your family. It's because the law allows this type of activity to take place. So ultimately, not only within our lifetime, I will venture a guess within the next 5 years, it's going to be legal just in about every state. Now, whether then you have that states' rights versus federal, because it's still illegal on the federal level. whether or not you're going to have that conflict take place. But I think the dollars and cents is such that states they need the money for things. Look, the school teachers are going on strike. We have infrastructure concerns. We have any number of issues, that homelessness and so on, that issues that need money, only respond to money and funding. And in that regard, and this is what I think is important here, Dr. Taitt, is revenue sources are going to be looked at very differently than perhaps they were looked at 20 years ago or even 5 or 10 years ago. And marijuana is basically a cash cow for any state. That they're just letting graze in the grass, no pun intended.
Dr. Forde, thank you. Thank you for coming on Brooklyn 45.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you, Dr. Taitt.
Good.
Okay.
Good. Dr. Wallace Forde, attorney Wallace Forde from Medgar Evers. Heritage House is known as a grassroots cultural organization here in Brooklyn. Miriam Robertson is the director of this organization. Welcome to Brooklyn 45.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me.
What is culture? Culture, what does that mean to your organization?
Well, culture means passing on traditions and heritage, meaning what makes your ethnic group unique. For African descendants, it means usually your grandparents, your mother and father, or your aunts and your uncles and your cousins, and you all generally live together. That's not the case anymore. But at that time, you would tell stories and pass down your history to one another. So culture is, like I said, it's traditions, culture. Well, I'm not gonna say culture again, but just what makes you or your ethnic group unique. I would say that.
What are the demographics of people in your organization at Heritage House?
African descendants.
Yes. In terms of age demographics?
We have from very, very little to our most eldest person.
What do you teach the little ones?
Well, the little ones, we try to inundate them with what's going on. So that you're never too young. I'll say this. With my daughters, I have twin daughters, and I used to take them everywhere with me from the time they can walk. So now, because they was doing that from little, it's just a part of their everyday life, or they just automatically do it because they've been accustomed to doing it all the time. So.
What are some of the challenges your organization faces?
Oh my goodness. Just getting people to come out. Just to, you find people, they say, oh, we don't have this in our community. We want this in our community. And we've been here for 37 years. We offer everything from plays to jazz to workshop on health to education to nutrition. And just getting your audience to come.
Just getting people to get engaged and to come out.
Is the hardest part.
How are you going to change that?
Well, I've been doing the daily operation now for the last 5 years, and I have to say, we've increased a lot. So, I guess the catchphrase of the day is rebranding. So I've been rebranding for the last 5 years. So our numbers are going up. I've been learning how, in this new age of technology, how to reach people through Facebook and Instagram and I guess email and so forth.
You're situated exactly where in Bronxville?
We're actually located in the Stone Avenue branch that's located on Mother Gaston and Dumont Avenue. Though we are located in one of the Brooklyn Public Library's oldest buildings, which was actually the first children's library built in the United States. It is one of 26 Andrew Carnegie donated to the Brooklyn Public Library. So we're very fortunate to be there, and we're located on the second floor of that branch.
Can people from anywhere in Brooklyn come to Heritage House?
Yes, any place in Brooklyn, the state, the country, the world. And we've had people come from as far as Japan, Germany, so yes.
So you're rebranding.
Yes.
You've seen some positive changes.
Yes.
What would you like your legacy to be?
I want it to not also, though we focus on African descent, we I wanted to also focus on Brownsville as well. With the climate change, when you hear Brownsville, oh my God, you live in Brownsville? No, there are so many good things in Brownsville. So my next goal now is to change that image of Brownsville, to let you know that art and culture is alive and happening here in Brownsville. So
I want to thank you, Miriam Robertson, Director of Heritage House. We have to have you back,
oh,
but
thank you.
we're running out of time. Thank you, Miriam Robertson, who is the Director at Heritage House. And we also want to thank Wallace Forde, attorney and also professor at Medgar Evers College. We want to thank you for that enlightening bit of information about the legalizing or non-legalizing of marijuana. You can watch this program on our YouTube site, youtube.com/Brooklyn45TV, and please visit our Facebook page, like us, and post your comments about this program, and tell us about some topics you'd love us to discuss here on Brooklyn 45. On behalf of our Brooklyn 45 team, I'm Sam Taitt.